The salvage ship Horizon's Edge drifted silently through the debris field, its searchlights cutting through the darkness like silver blades. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes reflecting the scattered remains of what must have been an epic battle. Twisted metal and shattered hull plates stretched for kilometers in every direction, most of it centuries old, according to their scanners. "Chen, you're wasting time again." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through her comm. "This is a salvage operation, not a sightseeing tour." Sarah adjusted her magnetic boots and sighed. At 28, she was the youngest engineer on the crew, and Rodriguez never let her forget it. "I'm not sightseeing, Captain. There's something different about this field. The decay patterns don't match standard material degradation in vacuum." She could almost hear Rodriguez rolling his eyes. "Everything's different with you, Chen. Just tag what's valuable and move on. We've got quotas to meet." Sarah started to respond but stopped as her handheld scanner picked up an anomalous reading. Deep in the heart of the debris field, something was emitting a faint energy signature. Not radiation, not heat, but something else entirely. Her pulse quickened. "Captain, I'm picking up something unusual. Permission to investigate." There was a long pause before Rodriguez replied. "You've got 30 minutes. After that, we're moving to the next sector." Sarah didn't waste time. She activated her suit's maneuvering thrusters and pushed off from the observation deck, gliding through space toward the source of the readings. As she navigated through the debris, she noticed something odd about the arrangement of the wreckage. It wasn't random like most debris fields. There was a pattern to it, almost like it had been deliberately arranged to hide something. 20 minutes later, she found it. Hidden behind a massive sheet of twisted metal was a ship unlike anything she'd ever seen. It was relatively small by modern standards, maybe 60 meters long, but its design was extraordinary. The hull was made of a material that seemed to drink in her searchlight, its surface smooth and unmarked, despite its apparent age. No visible seams, no weapon ports, no external systems, just flowing lines that reminded her of a predatory fish. "Captain, you need to see this," she breathed, activating her suit's camera feed. "What am I looking at, Chen?" Rodriguez's voice had lost its usual edge of irritation. I think it's intact, sir. Completely intact." She drifted closer, her scanner working overtime to analyze the vessel. The energy signature was stronger now, pulsing like a heartbeat. As she approached the hull, something extraordinary happened. A section of the seemingly seamless surface rippled and parted, revealing an airlock. "Chen, do not approach that opening. I repeat, do not." But Sarah was already moving forward, driven by a curiosity she couldn't explain. The airlock was sized perfectly for a human, which made no sense given the ship's obvious alien origin. As she passed through the opening, lights began to activate along the corridor beyond, casting a soft blue glow that reminded her of bioluminescence. The inner airlock door opened automatically, and Sarah found herself in a small chamber that hummed with hidden machinery. Her suit's sensors indicated breathable atmosphere and standard gravity, another impossibility in a ship that had been dormant for who knew how long. "Captain, I'm inside. The ship is powered and pressurized." She paused, waiting for the explosion of anger from Rodriguez, but her comm remained silent. The ship was blocking communications. Before she could decide whether to retreat, a holographic display materialized in front of her. Symbols she didn't recognize scrolled past, then resolved into English text. "GDNTTSC Paro, Bafile, ANALIZET, TUMPA dialate, 99.98%, ANITUAAT, ANG in URL interface." Neural what? Sarah started to back away, but suddenly the chamber filled with a soft golden light. She felt a gentle pressure in her mind, like someone knocking on a door, asking to be let in. "Hello, Sarah Chen," a voice echoed in her thoughts. It wasn't human. The concepts and emotions attached to the words were too alien. but it was undeniably friendly. "We have been waiting a very long time for someone like you." "What? What are you?" "I am the last survivor of the Sentinel fleet. And you, Sarah Chen, are the key to preventing the extinction of both our peoples." The holographic display expanded, filling the chamber with images that made Sarah's breath catch. She saw vast fleets of ships like this one, battles that spanned entire solar systems, and something else, something that lurked in the spaces between stars, hungry and patient and utterly alien. "The enemy we fought still exists," the ship continued. "They sleep now, but soon they will wake. Without your help, your species will face the same fate as mine." Sarah's mind raced with questions, but one thought rose above the others. No one back on the horizon's edge would believe her. She didn't even know if she believed it herself. But as the ship shared more images, more memories, she realized she didn't have the luxury of doubt. "What do you need me to do?" "Learn. Adapt. Become more than you are." The ship's presence in her mind grew stronger. "Your species has a remarkable capacity for both destruction and creation. Together, we might achieve what my people could not." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that whatever she decided next would change everything, not just for her, but for all of humanity. "Teach me." The chamber hummed with approval, and more systems began to activate throughout the ship. As Sarah watched in amazement, the vessel awakened fully from its long dormancy, responding to her presence like a long-lost friend. She had come looking for salvage, but had found something far more valuable: hope for humanity's survival, and perhaps redemption for a long-dead civilization. Behind her, the airlock sealed shut, and Sarah Chen began her journey into the unknown. The ship's neural interface felt like discovering a new sense Sarah never knew she had. Information flowed through her consciousness in streams of light and sensation, each burst of data carrying not just facts, but memories, emotions, and experiences that weren't her own. She floated in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays that responded to her thoughts as much as her movements. "This is impossible," she whispered, watching as complex star charts materialized around her. The energy requirements alone would. "Your species' understanding of quantum mechanics is admirably thorough, but incomplete," the ship's consciousness replied. Sarah had started thinking of it as Atlas, though its true designation was a concept rather than a name. "What you call dark energy, we learned to harness millennia ago." A sudden pounding on the outer airlock interrupted their discussion. Sarah's heart jumped. She'd almost forgotten about the Horizon's Edge crew. Through the ship's external sensors, she could see Captain Rodriguez and two security officers in EVA suits, attempting to breach the entrance. "They're worried about me," Sarah said, feeling guilty. "I should let them know I'm okay." "They will not understand," Atlas cautioned. "What we must do requires secrecy, at least initially. Your species is not yet united enough to face the truth without conflict." The pounding grew more insistent. Sarah could see Rodriguez shouting into his comm, though Atlas continued to block all external communications. "They're my crew, my people. I can't just disappear without explanation." She felt Atlas considering this, its thoughts rippling through their shared neural space like waves on a pond. "Perhaps a compromise. We can show them enough to ensure your safety without revealing our true purpose." Before Sarah could respond, a new alert flashed across her consciousness, a massive energy spike from the direction of the Kuiper Belt. The star charts shifted, focusing on a point of disturbance that shouldn't have been possible. "They're testing the barriers already." Atlas's thoughts carried an edge of concern. "Earlier than expected." "They? You mean the enemy you mentioned?" Sarah studied the readouts, trying to make sense of the quantum fluctuations she was seeing. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Instead of answering directly, Atlas shared a memory. Sarah found herself experiencing the last battle of the Sentinel fleet, seeing through the sensors of 1,000 ships as they faced something that defied comprehension. The enemy vessels, if they could be called that, didn't so much exist in normal space as tear through it. They'd brought with them laws of physics that contradicted everything humanity understood about the universe. The memory ended abruptly, but its implications were clear. These weren't just aliens. They were something fundamentally different from either humanity or Atlas's creators. Something that viewed the very existence of ordinary matter-based life as an offense to be corrected. How? Sarah's voice shook slightly. How did your people fight them? We didn't. Atlas replied simply. We lost. But in losing, we learned. Your species has something mine lacked, an adaptability born of chaos. You don't merely survive change, you thrive on it. The pounding on the airlock had stopped. Through the sensors, Sarah could see Rodriguez speaking urgently into a comm unit, probably calling for military backup. They had hours at most before this situation escalated beyond control. We must begin your training immediately, Atlas announced. The neural interface is only the first step. Your mind must learn to process information in new ways, to react at speeds your biology was never designed for. The command center shifted around them, holographic displays consolidating into a single immersive simulation. Sarah found herself standing on what appeared to be a training deck, though she knew it was all happening in her mind. Your species has a concept, Atlas continued, of pushing beyond normal limits in times of crisis. Adrenaline allowing a parent to lift a vehicle to save their child. Soldiers continuing to fight despite fatal wounds. The mind overriding all physical limitations for something greater than itself. Fight or flight response, Sarah nodded. But that's temporary. The human body can't sustain that state. With the proper interface, it can. The training deck came alive with targets and obstacles that moved in impossible patterns. We will teach your consciousness to operate on multiple levels simultaneously, to process reality in quantum states rather than linear time. Sarah watched as the first training sequence initialized, her mind already beginning to adapt to the accelerated perceptions the neural interface allowed. And this will help us fight them. These reality-breaking entities. No. Atlas' response carried a hint of what might have been amusement. This will help you survive the first minute of basic ship operations. Fighting them requires capabilities your species hasn't even imagined yet. The simulation began, and Sarah quickly discovered that basic ship operations, by Atlas's standards, were roughly equivalent to simultaneously playing 1,000 chess games while solving differential equations and conducting the symphony orchestra. The neural interface helped, translating impossible tasks into metaphors her human brain could process, but it was still overwhelming. Hours passed in subjective time, though according to her body's rhythms, only minutes had elapsed in the real world. Sarah failed the same sequence over and over, each time understanding a little more, pushing a little further beyond what she thought possible. Your persistence is remarkable, Atlas noted after her 47th attempt. Most species would have requested a reduction in difficulty by now. Sarah picked herself up from yet another simulated failure, her virtual body aching with phantom pain. You said Earth depends on this. The whole human race. So either I learn, or we all die. Simple as that. She felt Atlas's approval ripple through their connection. And that, Sarah Chen, is why your species might succeed where mine failed. You understand that survival often requires embracing the impossible. A new alert interrupted them. Ships entering the debris field. Not civilian vessels, but military. Heavy cruisers, if Sarah was reading the sensor data correctly. Your time to train privately has ended, Atlas announced. Are you prepared to face your people? To become a bridge between two civilizations? Sarah took a deep breath, watching as the military vessels approached. They would either be her greatest allies in the coming war, or her first real obstacle to overcome. Everything depended on what happened next. No, she admitted. I'm not prepared at all. But that's never stopped humanity before. The neural interface hummed with shared purpose as ship and pilot prepared to face their first real test together. The future of two civilizations hung in the balance, and Sarah Chen, salvage engineer turned humanity's last hope, was about to discover just how far beyond her limits she could go. The Earth Coalition's flagship Adamant emerged from the debris field like a predator scenting blood, its massive hull bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays. 4 escort destroyers flanked it in attack formation, their targeting systems already locked onto Atlas' position. Sarah watched them approach through the quantum-enhanced sensors, her mind processing tactical data faster than she would have believed possible just hours ago. 718 weapons currently targeted at our hull, she announced to the empty command center. I'm counting at least 3 different types of warheads, including something that looks experimental. They're not taking any chances. Your military's response time is impressive, Atlas observed. Though their weapons would be largely ineffective against our defensive systems. Let's try not to test that theory. Sarah's fingers danced through holographic controls as she opened a communication channel. This is Sarah Chen of the salvage ship Horizon's Edge. I'm unharmed and in control of this vessel. Request direct communication with your commanding officer. The response was immediate and predictable. Engineer Chen, this is Admiral Helena Drake of the Earth Coalition Navy. You are ordered to power down all systems and prepare for boarding. This is not a negotiation. Sarah had never met Admiral Drake, but her reputation was legendary. She'd risen through the ranks during the Mars Rebellion, known for both her tactical brilliance and her absolute dedication to protecting Earth's interests. If anyone would understand the threat they faced, it should be her. Admiral, with respect, I need you to listen. This ship, Sarah began, but a new alert screamed through her consciousness, cutting off her words. The quantum disturbance they'd detected earlier had grown exponentially. Atlas's sensors showed something massive tearing through subspace, headed directly for their position. They've detected our activation. Atlas's thoughts carried an urgency Sarah hadn't felt before. We cannot remain here. Admiral Drake. Sarah's voice took on a new authority, backed by the growing certainty that they were all in imminent danger. You need to move your fleet out of this sector immediately. We have incoming. The space between the military vessels suddenly rippled like heat waves over hot pavement. Reality itself seemed to fold, creating patterns that hurt Sarah's eyes even through the filtered sensor feed. At the center of the distortion, something began to emerge. Oh God, Sarah whispered, finally seeing their enemy with her own eyes. The vessel, if it could be called that, was an impossibility made manifest. It seemed to exist in more dimensions than space allowed, its surface constantly shifting between states of matter that shouldn't have been stable. Where it passed, the laws of physics bent and warped, creating a wake of chaos in normal space. A scout, Atlas informed her, one of their smallest vessels. The military ships reacted instantly, turning their weapons toward the new threat. Sarah wanted to warn them, to explain that conventional weapons would be worse than useless, but there was no time. The alien vessel pulsed once, and space itself twisted. The nearest destroyer simply ceased to exist, its matter converted into forms that couldn't survive in our universe. The other ships opened fire, their most powerful weapons having about as much effect as throwing pebbles at a tsunami. The Adamant launched its experimental weapon, some kind of quantum disruption device, but the scout vessel absorbed it, growing stronger from the energy. Atlas. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities, drawing on both her human intuition and the ship's vast knowledge. The debris field. The arrangement isn't random, is it? It's a ward of some kind. A quantum barrier designed to mask our presence, now broken by the energy emissions from your military vessels. Sarah made a decision. Admiral Drake, pull your ships back to minimum safe distance. I know you have no reason to trust me, but that thing out there, it's just the beginning. Let me show you what this ship can really do. Through their neural link, Sarah felt Atlas's approval as she initialized systems that had lain dormant for centuries. The ship's hull began to vibrate at frequencies that shouldn't have been possible, generating interference patterns in the fabric of reality itself. The technique is called quantum resonance, Atlas explained as they prepared for battle. We cannot destroy them directly, but we can make this space inhospitable to their form of existence. Like changing the temperature to drag out an invasive species, Sarah muttered, understanding flowing through the neural link. Admiral Drake, I'm sending you sensor data. What you're about to see. Just remember that Clarke's third law works both ways. Any sufficiently primitive technology would view our everyday devices as magic too. The scout vessel noticed their preparations too late. Atlas's hull erupted with energy that didn't so much travel through space as rewrite it, creating a bubble of altered physics where the laws of our universe held absolute dominion. Caught in the effect, the scout vessel's impossible geometries began to collapse, forced to conform to three-dimensional space or cease existing entirely. It chose retreat, tearing open a hole in reality and slipping away before it could be fully constrained. In its wake, it left behind radiation that would have been lethal to any normal ship, but Atlas's shields absorbed it easily. For a long moment, silence filled all channels. Then Admiral Drake's voice returned, tight with controlled emotion. Engineer Chen, what exactly are we dealing with here? Permission to come aboard the Adamant, Admiral. Sarah watched the quantum disturbance fade, knowing it was only a temporary victory. This is going to take some explaining, and we don't have much time. They'll be back, and next time it won't be just a scout. The next few hours would determine whether humanity faced this threat united or divided. Sarah could only hope that Admiral Drake and the Earth Coalition would understand what she had learned. That the greatest threat to human existence wasn't something they could fight with conventional weapons or tactics. It would take something uniquely human, the ability to adapt, to learn, and to turn impossible situations into opportunities. As Atlas initiated docking procedures with the Adamant, Sarah prepared herself for what might be the most important briefing in human history. She had to make them understand not just the threat, but the potential. Because if humanity could master what she was learning from Atlas, they might not just survive the coming war. They might revolutionize their understanding of the universe itself. They will resist, Atlas warned. Change on this scale always faces opposition. Maybe, Sarah agreed, watching the Adamant's docking bay approach. But that's another human trait you're about to learn about. We're really stubborn when it comes to surviving. The Adamant's war room was filled with holographic displays showing sensor data from the recent encounter, but the dozen senior military officers gathered around the table seemed more focused on Sarah than the evidence before them. Admiral Drake stood at the head of the table, her steel-gray hair and scarred face lending gravity to her already commanding presence. "Let me be clear, Engineer Chen," Drake said, her voice cutting through the murmurs of discussion. "You're suggesting that not only are we facing an invasion by entities that defy our understanding of physics, but that our only hope lies in mastering technology from an extinct alien civilization. Technology that, for some reason, only you can operate." Sarah resisted the urge to fidget under their scrutiny. Through her neural link with Atlas, she could sense movement in the quantum substrate around the solar system. More scouts, testing Earth's defenses. Time was running out. "The Sentinels didn't choose me randomly," she explained, projecting the genetic analysis Atlas had performed. "There's a specific combination of neurological markers that allows for stable interface with their quantum systems. It's rare, but not unique. We should be testing everyone, especially military personnel, for compatibility." "Convenient," General Matthews growled from his seat. The head of Earth's defense force had been hostile since the moment she arrived. "And we're supposed to just trust this alien AI. For all we know, this is an invasion tactic. Get us to lower our guards, integrate their tech into our systems." Sarah felt Atlas's amusement ripple through their connection. "Your General Matthews demonstrates another human trait, the ability to imagine threats where none exist while ignoring real dangers. If we wanted to invade," Sarah said aloud, allowing some of Atlas's dry humor to color her tone, "we wouldn't have bothered with this discussion. You saw what one scout vessel did to a military destroyer. Atlas's capabilities far exceed that. Before Matthews could respond, new alerts flashed across the holographic displays. Sarah's enhanced senses, coupled with Atlas's sensors, detected quantum disruptions forming throughout the solar system. Her blood ran cold as she processed the data. "They're not testing anymore," she announced, standing up. "Full incursion. I'm counting at least 30 spatial tiers forming. Largest concentration around Jupiter's orbit." Drake moved instantly, years of command experience taking over. "Battle stations. All ships prepare for." "Belay that," Sarah interrupted, knowing she was violating every protocol imaginable. "Conventional weapons will only make them stronger. Admiral, please, let me show you what we can really do." Drake studied her for a long moment, then nodded sharply. "You have 5 minutes to convince me, Engineer Chen. Make them count." Sarah closed her eyes, connecting more deeply with Atlas. Through their link, she accessed the ship's database, projecting a new set of holograms. These showed the fundamental principles behind the Sentinel's quantum manipulation technology. "We've been thinking about this wrong," she explained, her words accelerating as concepts flowed through the neural interface. "These entities aren't just aliens from another part of space. They're from regions where the fundamental constants of our universe are different. To them, our reality is as hostile as theirs is to us." The holograms shifted, showing the quantum resonance effect they used against the Scout. "We can't destroy them, but we can make it impossible for them to maintain their form in our space." Atlas creators developed the technology, but they were too rigid in their thinking, too focused on defense. "And you have a better idea?" Matthews asked, his hostility tempered by genuine curiosity. Sarah smiled. "I'm human. We have a talent for turning defensive technologies into offensive ones." "Atlas, show them configuration Omega." The holograms transformed, displaying a modification of the quantum resonance technology that made several officers gasp. Sarah had developed it during her neural training, combining human intuition with Atlas's vast knowledge. "Instead of just creating zones where they can't exist," she explained, "we can actively propagate our universe's physical constants into their space. Push back, not just defend, but reclaim." She turned to Drake. "But it will only work if we coordinate. One ship, even Atlas, isn't enough. We need to modify your entire fleet." Drake's expression remained neutral, but her eyes showed understanding. "The genetic testing. You need more pilots who can interface with this technology." "Yes, and engineers, scientists, anyone compatible. This isn't just about fighting, it's about understanding. These entities have been influencing our universe for millennia, creating dead zones where our physics break down. Think about what we could learn, what we could become, if we master this." New alerts interrupted her presentation. The spatial tiers were widening, and the first wave of enemy vessels began to emerge. They were larger than the Scout, their impossible geometries casting shadows that shouldn't have existed. "Time's up," Drake announced. "General Matthews, initiate solar system-wide evacuation protocols. All civilian ships are to fall back to designated shelters." She turned to Sarah. "Engineer Chen, you have operational command of this situation. Don't make me regret this." Sarah nodded, already connecting more deeply with Atlas. Through the ship's sensors, she could see the enemy vessels approaching, reality warping around them. But she also saw something they didn't: the quantum wake they left behind, like a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to their point of origin. "Admiral, I need your fastest ships and any personnel you've identified as potentially compatible. We're going to show these entities why invading human space was their biggest mistake." "They underestimate you," Atlas observed as they prepared for battle. "As my people did, they see only your technological limitations. They don't understand that humanity's greatest weapon has always been its ability to adapt, to take what seems impossible and make it inevitable." Sarah watched as the first enemy vessels entered weapons range, their very presence causing reality to shudder. But she wasn't afraid. For the first time since this began, she felt something else: Excitement. Humanity had been given access to technology beyond their comprehension, facing an enemy beyond their experience, and their response wasn't to cower or surrender. They were going to change the rules of the game. All ships, she broadcast across the fleet, prepare to receive quantum resonance specifications. Today we're not just defending Earth. We're about to teach these entities why picking a fight with humanity was their last mistake. The battle for reality itself was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the universe what they could really do. The solar system had become a battlefield unlike any in human history. Reality itself writhed and twisted as 37 enemy vessels clashed with the hastily modified Earth fleet. At the heart of the conflict, Sarah, Chen, and Atlas led the defense, their combined consciousness processing battlefield data at quantum speeds. Beta Squadron, spatial terraforming at coordinates 227 Mark 15. Sarah broadcast, her voice steady despite the chaos. Counter-resonance pattern Delta. Don't let them establish a foothold. Through her enhanced senses, she watched as 3 Earth destroyers, now equipped with modified versions of Atlas's quantum technology, executed a perfect triangular formation. Their combined resonance fields forced an emerging enemy vessel to either conform to normal spacetime or retreat. It chose retreat, its impossible geometry folding in on itself as it fled. They're adapting to our tactics, Atlas observed. Each retreat provides them with more data about our capabilities. Good, Sarah replied, surprising her alien partner. That's exactly what I'm counting on. In the week since first contact, Sarah had worked non-stop with Earth's best scientists and the handful of other humans found to be neural compatible with Sentinel technology. Together, they'd done what the Sentinels never considered. They'd weaponize the very nature of reality itself. Admiral Drake's voice cut through her thoughts. Chen, status report. Are we actually hurting them, or just pushing them back? Sarah directed Atlas to share tactical data with the Adamant's enhanced systems. Better than hurting them, Admiral. We're learning. Every engagement teaches us more about their structural weaknesses, their computational limits. And she paused, allowing herself a small smile. They're starting to show frustration. It was true. The enemy's attacks had become increasingly desperate, less coordinated. They hadn't expected resistance on this level. Like the Sentinels before them, they'd assumed that a technologically inferior species would be easy prey. They hadn't counted on humanity's unique talent for turning disadvantages into strengths. A massive spatial tear began forming near Mars' orbit, larger than any they'd seen before. Sarah's enhanced senses detected complex quantum signatures that made her heart race. This is it, she announced across all channels. Their command ship is coming through. All vessels, execute Formation Phoenix. This is what we've trained for. The Earth fleet moved with practiced precision, forming a complex 3-dimensional pattern that Sarah and her team had designed. Each ship's quantum resonance field linked with the others, creating a web of overlapping normal space zones that would force any emerging entity to partially conform to their physics. They sensed the trap, Atlas warned. But their arrogance compels them forward, just as my people's pride led to their downfall. The difference is, Sarah said, initiating Atlas's primary systems, we learn from the mistakes of others. The enemy command ship emerged from the spatial tear like a nightmare-given form. It dwarfed its scout vessels, its structure an ever-shifting maze of geometries that shouldn't have been possible. Reality buckled around it, creating waves of distortion that threatened to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. But the Earth fleet was ready. As soon as the massive vessel fully emerged, every ship activated their resonance fields at precisely calculated frequencies. The overlapping fields created a cascade effect, forcing portions of the command ship to exist in normal spacetime, while other parts remained in their native state. The resulting conflict of physical laws created exactly the kind of chaos Sarah had predicted. Now, she ordered, Phase 2. Atlas's systems surged with power as they executed the maneuver they'd only theorized would work. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy vessel, they began to manipulate the quantum wake it had left behind. The tear in reality it had used to enter their space. Sarah, Atlas's thoughts carried a note of concern. This exceeds safety parameters. The energy requirements will cause a complete systems overload in approximately 3 minutes, she finished. I know. That's why we only get one shot at this. The enemy command ship realized what they were attempting too late. It tried to retreat, but the Earth fleet's resonance field kept it partially anchored in normal space. Sarah reached out through her neural link, pushing Atlas's systems far beyond their designed limits. They weren't trying to destroy the enemy. They were doing something far more ambitious, reprogramming the quantum wake to create a one-way transfer of physical laws. Earth's universal constants began flooding into the enemy's native space through the tear they themselves had created. The effect was catastrophic. The command ship's structure began to collapse as the very laws that allowed its existence were rewritten. But more importantly, the change began to propagate through the spatial tier, spreading into the enemy's home dimension like a virus. All ships, fall back, Sarah ordered, feeling Atlas's systems beginning to fail under the strain. Minimum safe distance. The enemy command ship made one final attempt to attack, firing weapons that bent the laws of physics. But in the rapidly normalizing space around it, these weapons had nowhere near their usual effect. The massive vessel shuddered, its impossible geometries surrendering to the inevitable pull of standard spacetime physics. As the Earth fleet retreated, Sarah and Atlas maintained their connection to the quantum wake, ensuring the change continued to propagate. Through their failing sensors, they detected massive disturbances on the other side of the spatial tear, the enemy's entire civilization being forced to either adapt to new physical laws or cease to exist. Systems critical, Atlas announced. Neural interface destabilizing. Sarah gritted her teeth, maintaining their connection through sheer force of will. Just a few more seconds. The enemy command ship finally collapsed, its structure unable to maintain cohesion in normal space. The spatial tear began to seal itself, but not before their sensors confirmed what Sarah had hoped. The change had successfully propagated throughout the enemy's dimension. They hadn't just won a battle, they had fundamentally altered the enemy's entire reality. As Atlas's systems finally gave out, Sarah felt the neural interface dissolve. Emergency power kept life support running, but everything else went dark. They drifted in space, their work done. Admiral Drake's voice crackled through the backup communicator. Engineer Chen. Sarah, are you still with us? Sarah laughed, the sound carrying equal parts exhaustion and triumph. Still here, Admiral. Atlas will need some serious repairs, but we're alive. She paused, checking the quantum sensors that were still partially functioning. And we're alone. They're gone. Not just retreating, really gone. Their entire civilization will have to evolve to exist in normal space now, just like us. You rewrote the laws of physics in their dimension, Drake said, her voice carrying a mix of awe and concern. Do you have any idea what this means? The ethical implications alone mean we'll have a lot to discuss at the debriefing. Sarah finished. But right now, I think we should focus on the fact that humanity just faced its greatest threat and didn't just survive. We fundamentally changed the rules of reality itself. As rescue ships approached to tow Atlas back to Earth, Sarah felt the ship's consciousness stir one last time before their systems would need complete regeneration. You were right, Atlas communicated weakly. My people tried to defend against them. Humanity found a way to make them adapt instead. Perhaps that is why the Sentinels chose to wait for your species. Not because you were compatible with our technology, but because you could imagine uses for it that we never did. Sarah smiled, watching Earth's fleet regroup around them, already beginning to integrate their newly gained knowledge into their understanding of the universe. That's humanity for you, she said. Give us an impossible problem, and we'll find a way to turn it into an opportunity. Even if we have to rewrite the laws of physics to do it. The stars shone steadily in space that was, for the first time in millennia, governed by only one set of physical laws. Humanity had faced its trial by fire and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. They had proven themselves worthy inheritors of the Sentinel's legacy, not because they could use their technology, but because they could improve upon it. As Sarah Chen watched rescue operations begin, she knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe, armed with new understanding and capabilities that would change their civilization forever. They had faced the impossible and, in true human fashion, decided to remake it in their own image. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity was ready for whatever challenges it might bring. After all, they had just proven that even the laws of physics themselves weren't immutable in the face of human determination and ingenuity.